I think the first thing we need to do is say that we condemn this unequivocally. So that's important. So that people understand that there's no excuse for violence. Whether it's a rhetorical hate crime or not, it's still rhetoric. And you cannot equate rhetoric to acts of physical violence. That's key. I think people have to understand that. But then we as communities and we as a country and we as civil society have to stand up and say, you know what, these type of films that are meant to incite. This was very specific because they produced the Arabic version. It was very specific. It went to Arabic societies, and it was meant to incite people. And it did that, and people, extremists, bit the bait. And so we, as I said, a moral majority, have to say this does not stand for who we are as a people. Just as strongly we condemn the violence, we can come out and say, we as strongly say, when you try to incite, you're not part of our civic society. And so I think that it's a very, it's a balancing act. It's a tough balancing act at times, but I think we can do both of them because that's the type of society that we are. I think for American Muslims is that we as a community need to first of all appreciate the fact that we live in a society where religious freedom is robust, that we're part of a civic process, and when we have issues of concern, we engage in the civic process to address those issues of concern. And also the fact that we need to be able to come together at this point as various faith communities and stand with the people of Libya, of Egypt, of Tunisia, places where they're going through a democratic transition, where they need help in that transition process. Because these incidents are done on purpose to derail that transition process into democracy. And we as American Muslims can stand up and say, no, you don't represent the majority of Libyans, you don't represent the majority of Egyptians or Tunisians. And so we can be a loud voice in pushing away the extremists and the extremes from both sides and saying, we are the majority and we're no longer silent. I think the response is simple. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with societies that you live in. So if we live in democratic societies where we're able to express ourselves and we've been engaged in this process of citizenship, then we know how to express the concerns that we have in a civil and civic process. But when you have societies where there's been dictators for decades, where you've had no ability to express yourself, to freely express yourself in any way, then you resort to violence and you resort to ways that are not part of a civic process because there is no civic process. And so I think that's the key difference here. It's not a matter of how Muslims or Christians or Jews respond differently, it's a matter of how democracies and democratic societies and societies that have a civil society respond differently than those that don't and live under oppression and dictatorship. It's very simple. Violence, incitement impacts everyone. It goes beyond faith, it goes beyond religion, and so we are all impacted by it. So we all have to come together and denounce it and stand against it. And so that's why it's important. It's not only Muslims, it's not only Christians, it's not only Jews, it's all of us together. And we live in a globalized world where one small incident in a very small city or a village or a town will impact the rhetoric and actual issues around the world. And so that's why we all have to come together.